and dear to this world.
And this is Emily Jerkens Hall. And she didn't know I was introducing her, but she is also one of the nonprofit leaders. She's just not willing to admit it right now because she has a million other projects going on. She's on sabbatical from our breakout for now. So I'm the director of IT, and I sometimes can't get technology to work, so don't feel bad if you can't too. How do I advance this?
You just hit the right arrow.
Oh, it's off. That's why.
There we go. Hit that slide.
No, it's on.
Pretty quickly. It's probably because I touched something else right now.
Oh, there we go. Well, Austin already said it. Thanks to our sponsors, KeySys and Link. KeySys takes care of cybersecurity and AI or IT infrastructure, and then Link is an API for messaging. In simple terms, if API is too much, just don't worry about it. It helps people message across different platforms. Coming up on April 10th, is that right? April 10th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the AI in Action Business Summit at UAB at the Collat School of Business. I don't know what the status of this is. If this is open to the public. Okay, so this is open to the public. Some of us are going to be helping out there. It should be an interesting day. The guy you just heard from outside, Austin Senston, will be one of the presenters there. And it'll be a great conversation about the future of AI in business. If that's relevant to you, that's great. If not, there will be other opportunities for you to connect. It is an all-day opportunity. It's just good to note that it's 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I don't think that means you have to be there for the full day. If there are things that you wanted to pick and choose and register, I would imagine you could do that too. Thanks to our volunteers who helped make this possible, all the people who are outside checking you in, the people who are recording in the back. All of this is done because we believe in what we're doing and what Birmingham AI is doing. And what is it that Birmingham AI is doing? It's helping accelerate AI adoption in Birmingham for all. And we really mean for all. We want everyone to have access to this. We want everyone to be able to reflect on it, to understand how it works for us, how it might work against us, to ask good questions, to have good outcomes. We want everyone to be able to be part of this. And then our group's mission, which is a little kind of a submission of Birmingham AI, is to create a community that collaborates and helps Birmingham nonprofits to use AI to drive greater impact. So hopefully the work that you see here, the demonstrations you see here, and the connections you make here will help you to do that as we go along. Check us out on YouTube. You can see all of us being awkward on YouTube. It's great. I will never watch YouTube because I don't want to see myself speaking anywhere ever. So, I saw, who was here in February? Okay, so there's just a few who are here in February. In February, we had a really good conversation. That was when we looked at the feedback that we had gotten from people, we noticed that the room was very engaged in the conversation we were having. We used Menti as a way to gather information, and we'll do that again today. And we're going to have kind of a similar format for our discussion. So if you were here last time, you know that we had you break into groups and discuss, and then we had you come back and report out. And we also had you type in your responses into Menti. So then,
hey, we won't do that part today. But
oh, we're not doing Menti?
No.
Oh, shoot.
That's my labs. Sorry.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Well, we'll find a way to get it, to get the feedback. But we will do that in the future. But this is some of the feedback that came back from February, some of the questions and comments that people had. How can I best use agents and automation? If agents and automation are things that are foreign to you, that's okay. You don't need to know what that is right now. As you spend more time in this space, you'll learn more about what those things are. It's important to talk about safety, data, and security. There's a great potential to add capacity to our work and teams. So people who are doing a lot already can maybe be able to do a little more with the help of AI. I feel behind and that I need help learning this. If you feel that way, you're in good company. A lot of people who come here feel that way. And honestly, I felt that way when I first came here, and then they tapped me to be a nonprofit leader. So who knows what'll happen. And if you want to volunteer too, I'll just mention this. there's a lot of space for volunteering, for checking people in, for being leaders, for highlighting different things that you're doing and that people you know are doing. AI has a lot of ability that needs guardrails. So like not letting AI just kind of go off and do its own thing. What can AI do that I'm not even thinking of? This is one thing that Austin often talks about, is that when you are in, say, ChatGPT or Claude, ask it, what can you do? If you're interested in something, say, like for me, recently, I'm working on an LED project for my son. I'm making some shelves for him, and I have LEDs, and I'm like, I don't know how to wire these LEDs together, so I'm like, I'm working on an LED project. How can you help me? And then it says, well, here are some things to keep in mind on LED projects. Here are ways to connect your LEDs to your wires. And it gave me all of these really cool things that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. So ask it, what can it do? How can it help you? And what the possibilities are. Just be curious, and a lot will come out of that.
All right. Thank you, Matt. A couple things to touch on. Today we're going to get into a little bit of like some actual tools and show some demos of those tools with the hope that like it is immediately applicable. Okay. That is, especially from a nonprofit breakout perspective, our view is always, you're working at a nonprofit, you've got a million things on your plate, there's much more work than there are hours in the day, and so if we can show you something practical that'll help you be a little bit more efficient, do some of the work you need to do in a way that can amplify that work, then that is our goal. In February, since a lot of you were not here in February, what we talked about was a little bit of like, what does this year look like for AI? This is our chance to kind of look in the crystal ball and probably be proven wrong in 3 days when some new model drops and things like that. But what do we think this year is going to look like from an AI perspective? And there's a few things that we touched on, right? Like things are weird right now when it comes to AI. There's a lot of weird things happening in the headlines about agents and OpenClaw and Moltbook and all these kinds of crazy fun things. Talked a little bit about that. We talked a lot about the fact that there's still a lot of unanswered questions, right? There's these big questions about like the future of work and the environmental impacts of AI and water usage and like good or bad ethics, like how should we be thinking about those kinds of things? And so there's still a lot of really unanswered questions when it comes to any kind of new technology. But we're also seeing this opportunity that we have shifted pretty significantly in what AI can do. And if you haven't updated your mental model in the last, I would say, 2 months about what is possible with an AI tool, hopefully today will show you a little bit of like what is actually possible. Because we've now moved to this point of, instead of just like having an interaction with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or your choice of model, we have these systems. It's AI that can actually do things. It's much more of having an assistant where I can hand off a task and check in later. And this is a really big change if you've spent the last 3 years just talking to ChatGPT. And like, sure, you've been able to do some cool things with that and generate, a lot of text with a lot of bullets, right? We've been using ChatGPT. But we're kind of moving to that next phase of like AI that's actually useful. And so that's what we want to start focusing on today. Our goal for this year, for this breakout, is to focus on that. Focus on helping you see what you can do with AI. So we want to move a little bit beyond like the theory. We're going to move a little bit beyond the like, here is what AI is, and get into some of the practical uses. How many of you in the room are actually working at a nonprofit right now, actively? Fantastic. That's great. We have a fun thing happens with some of our Birmingham AI sessions. We have a lot of people that like to show up just because they like what's going on, right? And so it's great that a lot of you are actually working at nonprofits. I'm going to really focus on you today as we go through and talk through these things because, again, having worked at several nonprofits myself, having several nonprofit clients, there's not enough hours in the day to get the work done that needs to get done, right? If you want to join the conversation with us as we continue on this journey, this QR code will take you to sign up for our April event. We are now meeting what's today, Tuesday? The third Tuesday of every month is this nonprofit breakout. We're going to continue building on the conversation that we start today with practical tool use. And so if you want to be here for the next part of that conversation, keep coming back. And that QR code will take you to that Eventbrite, which should be live right now. Anybody that pulled that up? Are you seeing an Eventbrite that's live? Perfect. There's always lunch like at noon, so it's always a bit of a gamble if they're live by the time you look at that or not. So that'll take you to the sign up for April. We'll show this again at the end. If you want to see if you're going to get any value first before you sign up, that's okay. We'll show this at the end as well. Anyone in here using Claude Cowork? A few hands. Anyone here using Claude Code? A few more hands. Anyone in here using Codex? A few hands. Okay. Anyone in here have no idea what those things are that I just asked about? Okay, that's good. We're going to start to talk about, again, like AI systems that actually do things. And in order for us to do that, we're going to focus today on a tool called Claude Cowork. I'll share a little bit about what it is, how it works, all those kinds of things. But this was something that came out in January. And that's where I say if you haven't updated your own mental model recently of what AI tools can do, it's time to do that because the pace at which they are evolving is accelerating. And what you can actually do with them is shifting into the like cool use, right? The like, oh, this is fun, this is cool, I hadn't done this before, and to the like, oh, well, this is like actually useful now. This is actually practical. This is in the tools that I work with. I can do the things that I need to do within my job using these tools and do it much faster. And Claude Cowork is really the first system, in my experience, and I've been working with companies for a long time using a lot of different tools, it's really the first system in a long time that has like been that approachable and given you that much power, which is why we like to focus on that. In order for us to have this conversation, I need to take a quick detour, which is to introduce a new topic, maybe. Hopefully, for some of you, it is new. Up until this point, we've really been focusing on like which model are you using, right? Or like which LLM are you using? And for those that don't know, an LLM is a large language model. If you go to one of these websites, you are accessing the LLM on the web. So, you know, maybe you've been using Gemini or ChatGPT or Claude. About a year ago or so, ChatGPT made it a lot easier to change the model that you were using. And it took a long time for people to see that that was possible. It took even longer for people to understand what that meant, right? If you're using something like Claude, you may see at the bottom of the little text box, it might say something like Sonnet 4.6 or Opus 4.6, right? Those models, for a long time, that was the focus, like which is the newest model, right? Your LinkedIn, if you're like mine, was probably filled with Opus 4.6 just dropped. Everything you knew about AI is wrong, you know? Like, it was all about the model. The newest model gave you the best capability. The newest model was the best at what it was going to do. Now what we're seeing is that those models are really only part of the puzzle. So think of the model like the brain. Or let's take a different analogy. Let's say Anthropic, who makes Claude, is like Honda, okay? Honda makes engines. You can think of that engine like a model. They make small engines, you know, little 4-cylinder things. They make little tiny things that like go on my lawnmower. And then they make big engines. And those engines have different purposes, just like models have different purposes. Opus 4.6, if you're in the Claude world, is best for like really complex tasks. It has like the most thinking, the most training ability. Sonnet is better when you like just need something quick, right? You need a lot of text-based things. Different models, different uses, okay? Hold that thought for a second. What we are now seeing, if I can introduce you to this new term, which is a harness. So I now have a model, but I can put that model in a lot of different other tools that give me new capabilities. So think about our Honda engine. I can take that same Honda engine and put it on a lawnmower, or I can put it in a motorcycle, or I can put it in a pickup truck, right? And depending on where I put it, what system surrounding it is going to change what I can do with that engine. And so the model, this analogy is kind of thinking of this like a computer. The model becomes the brain, the CPU, right? And if you've heard of things like context windows or tokens, that becomes like the memory system here. But then this harness becomes the actual operating system. It allows us to do the work using that brain, using that memory. And then agents just become the applications that the system can launch to actually do tools. So it's kind of this idea, to quote OpenAI, like harnessing is all about humans are the ones like steering this work. You're, in the way that you use a computer, you're steering the work, but you're not actually like connecting bits and bytes in the background of your computer, right? You're letting it do the execution work. You're just kind of controlling what it is doing. If any of these terms on this screen look familiar to you, you've been using kind of micro versions of a harness for a while. So if you've set up a project in ChatGPT or Claude, if you've set up a gem in Gemini or custom GPT, if you've connected with connectors things to your ChatGPT, if you've connected things via MCP and Claude, if you've used deep research, right? Like all of those are essentially little micro versions of a harness. It's using the model, you know, whatever system you're in. If you're in ChatGPT, like it's using 5.2 is one we've had for a long time, is the brain. It has this context window of things we're doing, but then we had this system where it was able to go out and do things, okay? I say all of that because when we get into Claude Cowork and Claude Code, that is a bit of a distinction for some people. If this is your first interaction with those systems, people, you know, after I do one of these demos, they'll say, okay, well, I've been using ChatGPT, should I now use Claude Code, right? And that's like saying, well, you know, I drive a Camry, you know, should I go buy a horse? And it's like, well, those are very different things, right? Like, what? So I say all this to give a little bit of a pretext. Like, as we talk about these systems, it's important to understand what they are and what they are doing and how they work. If you are using things like these, if you are doing other things in your nonprofit, we would love to feature you here. Matt and Emily and I plan these sessions, put these agendas together, but we are all kind of still figuring this out as we go along, right? So if you work at an organization and you're doing anything with AI, we would love to talk to you. We would love to see what are you doing? Can we feature you here? You're probably, if you're doing anything with AI, there's probably other organizations that would benefit from hearing about that, and we would love to focus on you for one of these sessions. If you scan that, they'll take you to a quick survey you can fill out with just your name and your info, and then Matt and I will reach out, have a chat, see what it is you're doing. If there's another organization you're familiar with that's also doing cool stuff with AI that's a nonprofit, feel free to put their names. You know, we'll tell them you put their names, none of that. But we would love to be able to feature you on this stage. Okay. Let's get into this. There's one other idea I want to share very, very quickly, which is whenever we do any kind of live demo in front of a session, you know, first of all, we're going to send all the good vibes to the demo gods that everything like turns out okay. But there's two parts to this, right? There's a tool. I'm going to show you a demo in a specific tool, and then I'm also going to use that tool for a specific application, okay? Now, the hard thing sometimes when you're watching a live demo is it's easy to say, oh, well, I don't have that tool, so this doesn't apply to me, right? The cool thing about most of these AI tools is in the same way that you can drive a Civic or a Corolla or a Camry, right? Like you have different tools that can probably do this very similar things, right? So thinking through like, how do I use the tools that I have to take the idea of what they showed in that demo if it doesn't exactly apply to me? Which brings us to the application part. I'm going to walk through a few different samples of different types of data, using that kind of data. You know, in the nonprofit world, it's always easy to think about, right, like fundraising and development and you know, communications work. But we also know that for most organizations, that's like one person's job. And so it's easy to look at this and be like, well, I don't do development, so like none of this applies to me, right? And so my challenge is always like, think beyond what we're showing you from the live demo here and think about how could this apply to my work. Chances are you have data. Chances are you need to analyze that data. Chances are you need to like tell a story with that data. So it goes a little bit beyond just the specific demo that we might show on the stage. Okay, with that, let me actually start, before we get into Claude Cowork, with a different system. And this touches on a few of the things that we've talked about, which is like AI that does things, right? This idea of handing off something to an assistant, checking back later. If you use Microsoft Excel for anything, or Microsoft PowerPoint for anything, I know a lot of you probably work in the Google world, in the G Suite. Gemini now just launched some new integrations into things like Google Sheets and Google Docs, that they are rolling that out across more organizations. So again, tool may be different, application, something that might be similar. But if you didn't know, Claude now has a plugin to Microsoft Excel. So if you need to analyze data, if you have, this is a bunch of survey data from volunteers, from an event. The way that you would add Claude in your Excel is you would go to this add-ins feature, you would search for Claude, you would connect it, and then it shows up as a little side window here in your Excel. And so very quickly, what this does is a few different things. You can use this to analyze your data. You can say double check formulas. You can say, here's a bunch of raw things. I need to generate something else. I need to figure something else out. For this, let's just say I have a bunch of volunteer feedback data from 5 events that we ran. Please build a dashboard of this data and help me understand trends and look at the verbatim comments as well. Okay. And so what I have now done is I had this data. I needed to analyze this. I need to tell a story from this. I need to share this out in a report to my team or something like that. And I've just given that task to my assistant, right? My hands are now off of the keyboard. It's going to run. It's going to do a few different things. I'll let this run for just a little bit second longer, and then just like the Today Show, I'm going to pull the cooked version out of the oven for you. So what you'll start to see is this is actually building something in Excel, right? Like this is running, yes?
So is there a free version of Claude, and if so, does it do this, or is there a free one?
There is a free version of Claude. To get the integration into the Excel, you have to be on the $20 a month plan. Yeah. Which brings up another great point that I should have said before I did all of this. So if we're talking about data analysis, right? You work at an organization, you have data, that data is important. A lot of that data is important that data stays private. Using something like this is uploading that data into a Claude server. So if you do anything using these systems, I would highly recommend that you anonymize that data before doing any calculations, right? Don't upload that special data. Matt.
And I feel like we should point out here that it only has access to Excel.
This
right
does,
now.
right.
It's not like going onto your computer and doing other stuff on your computer.
Right, yeah, that comes next.
I'm sorry,
Oh, great.
Say that again.
This piece right here?
Yeah, about being protected under.
Of the data? Yeah, so before running something like this Claude integration in Excel to say, go analyze all this, I would anonymize that data first, especially if it has any kind of PII, right? So if there's names, if you work with students, right? Student names, addresses, socials, anything like that, scrub that out of there before running one of these systems in that. Okay, so you'll see this is running, this is building. Sometimes it'll run into an error, it'll fix itself, it'll keep running and churning until it kind of gives me what I want. Again, with the studio magic, so you don't have to watch all of that. Here is this the one that I already ran? Yeah. So here is a version of this that I ran earlier. I was just going to show you the history. So you can see it did quite a bit. And ran a lot of things, tried a lot of different things, gave me some key insights. I did not, when I first ran this, it did not give me the charts the way that I wanted it, so I did tell it to go back and update those charts. But it built all of this dashboard. This gives me, I didn't tell it to do anything from a color perspective, trend analysis, any of that. Just like, here's the data, analyze it, right? And so it has now built quite a bit of information on all of my events. Apparently, event 4, we had some issues. It found all of those. It found quotes, and then for that specific event, it found some differences and outliers and all that data. Let me go back over to our charts. We can kind of see those things that it built. Perfect. And then now I can continue to work with this, right? I now have this in Excel. I have my window open. I can continue to ask it questions. Just because I get this question frequently, I did want to show you what the Copilot output looked like. Yeah, so this is Copilot. For those that are in the Microsoft world, in my head-to-head, I tend to think the Claude output is a little bit better, but I did want to at least just show this to you. So this is Copilot, pretty similar in terms of what it came up with, built me a dashboard, built me all of that, right? Great, cool. So I wanted to start here because I think this is like the first stepping stone for a lot of people, right? If you're used to just using a ChatGPT or a Claude on the web, right, where you have to like upload files to it, this already signals a bit of a different shift. Like I am now in a system that I operate in frequently, which is Excel. I have opened up my AI assistant in the window, and I've asked it to analyze and do the work within the system, right? So I'm in a very different place than just being on ChatGPT or Claude on the web. This is a different harness, to use that term, okay? Let us now look at Claude Cowork, which is also a very different harness, okay? A few things to note. How did Claude Cowork come to be? What is it? So Claude Code, which was, as you can maybe guess from the name, developed for developers, people who write code, launched right at a year ago. And it was very powerful. People were writing, tons and tons of lines of code. You may have, if you paid attention to all the headlines, there are big companies, Anthropic and OpenAI being some of them, where their developers are not doing very much developing anymore, right? They're not actually like writing lines of code. They are letting agents go and write the actual code. They are checking that it all makes sense, that it works, all of that. What they found was that because these systems were able to do so much and do it so well, that these users of Claude Code started using Claude Code for all kinds of other things. They were building, entire health and wellness systems, track all my meals, my workout routines, and optimize this for, my personal macros. Or, I've got 3 kids and they're all involved in different sports. Like, build me a quick little app on my phone so I can keep track of who's doing what at all times and communicate, with my partner of who needs to pick up whom where. All these kind of other uses and other things. And the downside of Claude Code was it looks a lot like a Microsoft DOS screen from 1997, right? It's command lines. It's like if you open up the terminal, black background, little slashes and white words and stuff. Like it looks a lot like that. Now they've since added a bit of a graphical interface in the past few months that helps with that. But for the average person who wasn't used to that, that was very intimidating. And people weren't really using that, right? But they saw the power of this agentic system, the system that I can give it a task. It can spin up its own agents and sub-agents. It can go and do the task, and then I can check in on it. And that was very, very different than the chat experience, right? In terms of what it was capable of. And so in January, they launched Claude Cowork, which is essentially Claude Code. It's the same engine and brain and power and essentially the same harness, just with a much better interface. This does not look all that different from chat on the web, right? And this is available on the desktop version. You can't get to this if you go online. You have to download the desktop version because this actually runs on your computer, which means it has access to your files, which is kind of the benefit of this system, right? kind of its whole purpose is it can operate within your system, within your files, do that kind of work. Now, let's just take one quick step back and talk about data and security and things like that. This is an immensely powerful system that does some really cool things, and we're going to show a few of those cool things today. This really amplifies the need for organizational guardrails. What data are we using? What are we allowed to upload? What can we not upload? Because this makes it extremely easy for this system to have access to those things, because I am pointing this system at a folder. And if I'm pointing it to a folder and I'm not 100% sure of everything that's in that folder, I could be exposing data to the system if it's in that folder, okay? I have a client right now in a legal battle because of something very similar. So being really, really clear about how you are staging your data, what folders you are giving it access to when you start to use a system like this is extremely important. There's never been a more important time to have, organizational guardrails and policies and all those kinds of things. Okay, so let me give you some ideas of what you can do with this, what to do, all those kind of things. I'm going to start by going into a folder. And let's see, did I have this open already? Nope, let me get into a different folder. And I'm going to go over here, resources, and this is the folder I'm going to choose. Okay, so I have now pointed this at a specific folder on my computer with files in that folder. The sample that we just did in Excel, Claude Excel, said here's some data, go analyze that. Like, let's do that again, or a similar thing to that. But I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to say, not only do I want you to analyze this data for me that I have in an Excel sheet, go ahead and generate like a few slides that have that story, so I don't have to then take the dashboard and put it somewhere else. So let's say I have some, and this time let's look at, I have some student data. Some like student evaluation data that I would like to prepare a slide for a board meeting that analyzes and recaps the trends in that data. Okay. Now I could just stop there, let it run. It'd probably ask me a few questions. What I can also do is, because I'm looking at a specific folder, I can direct this at things in that folder and say, in this case, this is my student data. And did I save a slide? Yep, okay. And then I also say, make sure you're using this slide template, so you don't just do something random. Okay, and then I'm going to tell it to run. Now there's a few things you'll notice on this screen that look a little bit different than just like a normal chat. So first, this is like starting up. It's kind of booting all of its systems up. Let's talk about this right side of the screen. And if you're in the back, this might be a little hard to see. But what you will notice is at the top in this progress section, the first thing it's going to do is generate a task list. It's going to first look at what did I ask it to do. It's going to go and it's going to read a few different skills. Those are things that are going to drop into its context window. So it saw that I asked to generate a slide, so it's gone and read this PowerPoint skill of how do I as Claude Cowork make a slide. It's going to continue in looking at whatever skills it needs to examine as it goes through. And then in a second, you'll see it's going to generate a to-do list up here at the top, which will be kind of its plan of things that it runs through. Okay, so here is our task list. It has generated this plan. It's going to analyze the data. It's going to look at trends. It's going to analyze the slide template. It's going to build it. It's going to do its own visual QA to make sure that everything looks okay before it presents me the result. Okay, so already we're in a very different world than working with the chat window where I give even a really well-crafted prompt, right? Like this is now, I've given this a task, I can go away and do something else, and it's going to continue doing these steps. In fact, does anyone here work at the United Way? Perfect. So in fact, I can also go, and while that's running, I can go do other things in the same system. I can now spin up multiple sub-agents and let this start to run several things. While that runs, something else that is helpful in these systems, if you've used things like a custom GPT or a gem or a project, where it's like something very specific that you do frequently, you've built these systems where you say, I want to generate a grant, and like here's our template, and here's our language, here's our style guide, all those kinds of things. You have that same ability in Claude Cowork through a few different things. If you've built a project in Claude, you can access that specific project from here. And so if you have something that has like your style guide built and say, I want to go and run with that, perfect. You have these connectors. You can plug this into the systems that you work and use. My life lives in Notion, so I have this connected to my Notion. I can say, go read my Notion, this page for this, and do X, Y, and Z, and it will. But it also has these plugins, which you can find these on GitHub and upload them. But Anthropic has also released a bunch of native plugins. And what these are essentially like additional skills where I don't have to now go and like train the model to do these things. I can just use this plugin and let it run. And I have this marketing plugin. And so one of the things on this marketing plugin is an SEO audit. For those unfamiliar, this is like how well does my website perform and finding search. And so I ran this SEO audit of the United Way's website earlier today to kind of just give it something out there. You know, they've got a lot of cash. They can pay for SEO optimization, right? And so what you will see, again, is my, all I had to do was just say SEO audit and then drop in their website at the top. That was my prompt.
Andrew,
yeah.
Quick question. Did you say that you custom built this prompt or it was built in via?
This is already built in via the plugin. I didn't do anything. I just enabled it and said, go run and do this. And I'll show you the back end of that in just a second. It's a good reminder. Thank you. So here you see it found their website. It built its task list. It went and did all of its work. It actually opened up a browser. It opened up its own Chrome window, went to their website, looked at it, clicked through, and generated this report. And so, again, we'll send this to them if anyone feels strongly and say, here you go, here's your audit. But you know, this is pretty extensive, right? So like this went through and found a lot of different things, it's grading them on you know, how well these things show up, all these keywords. I'm going to start scrolling really quickly here because there's a lot of information, right? And so, again, this idea of like a system doing something, right? This is giving me very actionable things that if I did this on my website, which I have, you know, this gives you some very quick things. So there's there's entire kind of, we would call these like verticals or department built in with these plugins now from sales, law, finance, marketing, operations. You can, you know, you can do, you know, triage your NDA or look at for compliance on things from a legal perspective. You know, I'll add my, you know, consult with a legal professional, you know, don't trust everything that comes out of these systems. However, this gives you a running leap into a lot of those. And Emily asked if I made that. I did not. Within the marketing, there are all of these skills that you already have access to, that these already exist. Let's take a look at this one. And so a little hard to see, I know, because it's the way the screen is and there's a lot going on over here. But what you used to build into a custom GPT or a project is your like custom instructions. All of those are already built in. They already exist. You have access to all these skills, all these plugins, right? Okay.
And Andrew, is
Yes.
a skill in essence just like a very detailed prompt that they can act on? It's like
Yeah.
what was previously a prompt is now the skill is them being able to do the prompt.
That's one way of thinking about it. Yeah. And it's only calling for the skills as it needs them. I think that's a difference too, right? So if you noticed when I started, let's go back to ours. That little ding, by the way, was this saying, "Hey, your first thing is done." It gives you a little notification, say, "Hey, come back and check on me." So like when this looked at this PowerPoint skill, I told it to make a PowerPoint slide, and it read that. And once it read that, then it went and called that skill. It's not like it was something that it had stored in it, which is a detail that for most people you probably don't care about. But from a context window and token usage, it's great because I'm just grabbing the things as I need them versus like having to load all that in at the top, which really can max out your context window quickly. Okay, did I see a hand in the back? Someone had a question? Yes.
Yeah, so if I run the audit, can I then still engage and like ask further clarifying questions?
You can. Yes, you absolutely can. And technically, you could. So my website's built in Squarespace. I could have it then open up Squarespace. I would put my credentials in and log in, and have it through the Chrome browser make some of those changes for me if I wanted to, right? And I would watch it, and I would make sure I was doing things the right way, right? And so, yeah.
I know, so there's SEO, and then the new thing called GEO.
Yeah.
So your website being optimized. What advice do you have for nonprofits as they can balance using these tools to look at it from the...
Yeah, so the question was, there's a lot of conversation right now around SEO is dead because no one's using Google anymore, right, to search for things or using chat windows and stuff. The key takeaway is that everything that worked really well for SEO works really well for GEO, or it's got a lot of different names. Anyway, they're like pulling me up in a chat window if I search for something in ChatGPT or Claude, getting seen. There are a few other things to do that we won't make this a marketing session, but that's a great thing to say to one of these systems. I want to improve my GEO score. What should I do? And build those things in. Okay, so a couple of things that this did for our report. It analyzed our data. You'll see it did quite a few things, right? It's editing files. It's looking at different metrics. It's calculating overall averages. Now I need to change the down arrow colors. So it did a visual QA of like, what did I produce? What did it look like? And then ultimately it says like, here's my presentation. And if I go and look in, again, this is working in my system. This is the folder that we were working in. And so you will see this is the slide that it just made, the set of slides that it created a few minutes ago. And let's see which window is it going to open this up in. Pull this over here. And this is the slide, okay, that it created from my results. Now, I am not one to ever say like the first result you get back is like a great result. But if you think about what I asked this to do and where this gets me again from like doing things, it looked at a file, it analyzed the file, it found trends, it built the slide. I can go back now and like tweak things here. It also generated the slide using a specific template, right? So it's not just like the random shapes that you kind of get sometimes with Gamma or other like slide generators, because it's built in the same context and using those same systems. And so I could have this running in the background while I was going and working on other things and then come back to it and check it out. It takes the data, it creates the slides. It is that assistant that I can now hand things off to. All right, there was one other thing I wanted to show, and I want to make sure we've got plenty of time for some questions here as well. Sorry, just looking through my past history over there. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to point out too, and I'll use one of my personal examples for this, is they've just introduced this, which is fantastic. If you've been using systems like Innate-In or Zapier or Make or any of those like workflow systems, and if you don't know what those are, that's totally fine. sometimes you want things to happen on a cadence, right? You want to, like, on a schedule, every morning do this thing. You can kind of set up several different things, work on a schedule. Recently, they have introduced scheduled tasks in Cowork as well. So there are now actual, you can run specific tasks on a regular interval. For me, so I'm a consultant, you know, I live and die on referrals and outreach and all those kinds of things. And I have, you know, in my system that I keep track of everybody, it's really easy to get overwhelmed with that. And I've got, you know, hundreds of people in my system that I like need to reach out to. And, you know, there's like those warm contacts you make at somewhere that's like, this isn't like a client necessarily, but it'd be good if I like keep in touch with them. So I have now built a system that goes through and looks at my Notion, which is where I keep all of that information every day. It looks at whoever I'm set to talk to that day. I've given it a library of things that I want to talk about and share and events coming up and things like that. It looks at that, it looks at the person, and I've tagged those people with like, what are they interested in? And then it puts those things together and drafts a little 5-line note that I can send directly, right? And it runs every morning. So part of my daily workflow is I get up, I look at my CRM, I look who I'm supposed to talk to today. The notes are already there. Maybe I use it, maybe I tweak it, maybe I change it. But again, that's like all of those tasks that I was having to do manually by hand, and even using something like just the regular Claude and chat, like it took a bit of work to go and generate that each time. Now it's done, right? So adding that scheduled piece, you know, is a very useful thing. So I show these specific examples today as kind of like scratching the surface of this a little bit, right? Like if you're coming in with, you know, I've only been using the web-based version of these tools. Having a system access your files, having it be able to do work in things like Excel and PowerPoint and Word and all these other systems that you use. This also does connect to some of the Google tools. Being able to kind of access those other systems with this same brain, right, and this harness that now gives us a chance to access those other tools is a pretty seismic shift in terms of what you can do with AI and the work that it can do for you. Again, we're just scratching the surface on these specific demos today. My challenge for everyone is to think about a way that you could try this week. Think about a task that you do regularly that you could try to give to one of these systems. Do it with staged data, you know, do it with fake data first, all those kind of things before giving it access to anything important. And if you are unsure of even where to start, to Matt's point, to get to the point where I built my scheduled tasks, I started here just by saying, hey, I have a problem where I need to stay in touch with 15, 20 people a day. I have a hard time thinking what to say to them. You know, they're not direct clients. Like, here's a process that I need to build. And over the course of about 30 minutes, we identified, okay, well, first of all, you need to build a little library where you can share things with these people. Second thing, you need to make sure you have the right tags of like, what are they interested in? Third thing, I'm gonna build you this scheduled task every day to run and kind of do these things. So having that ability to kind of build out your process as well, very helpful for doing that. So as you think about your application, right, what's the one thing right now within your workflow or that you see across your team that continues to be a roadblock, continues to not be as efficient as you want it to be? Throw that in here. Say, here's what we're dealing with, here's the problem, help me think through a solution, help me build a little something, build a little system, build a little scheduled task, right? And let's take it from there and then try it for a couple of weeks and see if that helps. So as I mentioned, scratching the surface on this, but I do want to make sure we have plenty of time to do a little bit of thinking about what we've seen here and what that could mean for your teams. And so I want to invite Matt back up to lead us in a quick discussion, just to like make some sense of all of this. So, Matt?
I actually just got a message that the Wi-Fi is down at my school.
Oh.
So yay! I get to go back to that.
Do you need to run?
I might need to.
Okay.
But I thought that what I would do is I would quickly run around and have people just ask questions. Because I don't think we have enough time for breaking into small groups and reporting back. But I thought if you had particular questions, I'd run around to you with this little lapel mic that you can hold because they're making a video, and then people who watch the video can hear the question. Does that seem okay?
Yeah.
So I mean, if there are particular questions, we can address those. But I'm wondering, as Andrew was speaking, what was it that resonated with you? Where did your brain go in terms of like what you could do with this tool? Or if you have a question you want to ask, you can do that too. You don't have to hold it right up to your mouth. You can just kind of hold it in.
Great. Something that I'm thinking about is email. Like I work for a summer camp, so we're constantly needing information from people who are coming out to camp.
Yeah.
So kind of wondering how to like automate some of that, connecting it to Gmail, kind of automating some of that work of, hey, if they don't get back to me, I want to reach out with this message. I'm also kind of wondering, like, is that safe? Like, is that safe to like expose email addresses like that? So those are some of the things I'm thinking about from this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great thoughts.
I might not even like a little bit louder than like. So I guess for us, we're at the Jewish Community Center down the street. So for me, I'm our membership director. So I think about it from a lead source of we use DAXKO, right? But as far as integrating it to when someone fills out a separate lead form that comes off our website, like a landing page off WordPress, instead of me, like right now, it feels very ancient for me to have to go in, manually enter all that, copy and paste an email. So I'm thinking like all the ways I could automate, kind of like what you're doing with your clients or leads, but who's warm, who's not, who do I need to revisit? Because a lot of times we'll have people that just come for summer camps or just come for swim lessons. Some are full blend members. But I guess a question I had was, is there a time or a place or a platform where you would use one over the other, right? Like I would use Claude for this because of this versus Gemini. Like do some, would you say in certain situations, benefit use over the other?
Matt, I'm curious for your thoughts on that piece.
I might be an outlier here in how I approach this, because I have a system set up where I have it route my requests based on what type of request it is. So if it's asking for something that's more agentic, where it's like trying to do something on my computer, I might use something like Claude or Kimi. But if it's doing something that's just trying to understand patterns, I'm going to use something that doesn't require a large input of tokens or money, because I'm paying by API. So that means that every request I have to pay a little bit for. So that can get expensive really quickly if I'm using an expensive one like Claude. Especially Claude Opus or Claude Sonnet. Even those are like $15 per million tokens. So I'll jump back and forth between them, but usually within the system that I use, which right now, like it or not, is OpenClaw. That's what I'm using.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm John, and we have Bowler AI. We do that down in Auburn. And for Claude, we just set ours up as a nonprofit. You can actually get it for $8 a piece per person in your group. And you get the professional plus, you get everything to it. And so that's $8, everybody gets it. So we just signed up everybody, all our interns, everybody. So for $84, everybody in our group now has the professional version for $8. And we're paying it, so nobody else has to pay it. So it's working good.
Do you know if that has to be everyone in your organization?
No, you gotta have 5 minimum,
Oh, okay.
and then you put in everybody you want, and that's what we did.
Okay.
We got 10 people roughly, so we're doing 8 right now, 2 are actually 1099s right now. So we have them in our group, pay for just the one. It actually is impressive when you step up from paying $20 a month and getting just the version. You get 4.6 at the Pro Plus. The transformation has been amazing in just 3 days. That's how long ago we've been doing it. We're writing all our procedures and everything. And Claude's doing it. And then once we get Claude to write it, then we tell Claude to go over it, see if he's made mistakes. And he tells us, yes, these things need to be added to. And then redoes the whole thing for us. It's been amazing just in 3 days.
Yeah, that's a great trick, using like a verifier to say, is this good or not? Yeah.
OpenAI GPT-5 Mini is a workhorse. I mean, I haven't even put $10 in it, and I'm processing images, I'm doing all of that stuff. It hasn't run up. So it's a pretty good starting point, and then have Claude review its work.
Yeah.
So and that's like, yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice going cross-platform to have like one LLM review the work of another LLM to be like, hey, is this one hallucinating like crazy?
Yeah.
Or and hallucinations are very low right now. I think the numbers are pretty much less than 1%
Yeah.
at this point.
Fractional, yeah.
Because it helps you think outside the box. I actually like it. But then again, I can interpret what it
Yeah.
is, you know.
I thought it's less of an issue of hallucinations, but I do a lot of research with that, and I think as a researcher, you have to be really strong at evaluating the prompt because it has memory context and it wants to please you sometimes, and so it can ask leading questions to bias the research. And so I would just recommend if you're using it to analyze any PDFs or you're pulling a deep research report, like really be thoughtful. I mean, you can even have it take on the persona of, you're a researcher and you look at, to evaluate your prompt to make sure you're not just getting the results you want to get. So that would be advice from that practice.
Hey guys, I'm Patrick. I work for a small nonprofit on Lake Martin, and a lot of the tasks that are on my mind are CRM and kind of contact and constituent related. I'm wondering if there's a way to run models like locally at all where you don't have to like anonymize your data. That just sounds like pretty hard for a lot of things I'm thinking about. Like if I could get an agent to use my CRM and Google Forms and kind of make them all talk together, there's a way to not have to anonymize or worry about data.
Yeah, there is a way to do that.
Llama's a good one.
Yeah.
Have it process it first and then send it out if you need to.
But you would have to have a separate. You'd have to have some sort of a system set up that gave access to your emails.
Okay.
So you might need something like N8N. Ollama is not going to do it on its own in the Ollama interface. So, but you can work those locally with a pretty simple GPU.
Okay.
So I use that at home, and anything that I need to process locally, I process on there using N8N and Ollama together.
And just to go back to what y'all were saying too, this may not apply depending on the size of your organization, but if you have at least 5 people who you want to give a license to, then you can upgrade to a team level of Claude, or I think it's just 2 people minimum on ChatGPT. But that elevated permission set does provide some extra data protection as well. It is SOC 2 compliant in terms of its data protection, and it's by default a closed loop. So there's some additional data protection. It's no longer a default that you're training future models, all those kinds of things that become the security questions. If you can get to that team level, it does protect some of that. And so it lessens a little bit of that need. The biggest risk that I think we see is just if you're using a free version, right? That's really where,
Right.
Especially if you have team members, and this is a whole conversation on something called shadow AI, but if you have team members who are just using a free version or their own personal version of something and they're uploading sensitive data, that's the kind of thing where you want to make sure you have a clear policy for. But if you can elevate, if you have enough people, it makes sense to elevate to that team level, that does come with a lot of additional data protection. Yep.
And just uncheck that tick box that lets them use your data for training too.
Yeah. We have time for one more.
One more.
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw you the microphone. So the reason we use this is for the video, not for everyone in here.
Hello everybody, my name is Jordan. I'm the Digital Engagement Director of Mountaintop Church. And Andrew, you said something very, that stood out to me, that like Google Ads and stuff like that is kind of like outdated because of a lot of these systems. I guess, what is the best way to drive traffic using these AI tools to your website or to your products?
Yep. The 30-second answer is SEO best practices still apply,
Okay.
right? So doing things like an SEO audit still makes a lot of sense. Just search for, you can use the phrase GEO on top of that. And really what it comes down to is there's a couple of files you want to have on the back end of your website that are available to the crawlers. There's some layout questions on your website, like having very clear FAQs, things that are a bit more like natural language, because when people are typing into a chat window versus a Google, they're typing in more natural language. So if you have very specific, here's what we do, here's who we serve, here's what we're about, in more natural language, that tends to elevate that quite a bit. But GEO is what you want to search on for the best practices around that.
Gotcha.
And that's a good
Appreciate
plug
that.
for our marketing breakout, which also meets monthly here, and they talk a lot about those kinds of things from marketers. We have, I think, we're up to 13 different breakouts. This is a nonprofit breakout. There's about 13 different ones. I'll take that from you. Thank you.